I made a lot of changes throughout the years of my life, many changes that were necessary for me to continue to grow as a person. Raised in South Philadelphia Project in Wilson Park from 1965 till 1978, my family did their best to keep me from falling prey to the streets. And even though I got involved in some of the things in the street, I didn't get totally sucked into a lifestyle of criminality and just nothingness. They saw to it that I went to school. They saw to it that I had some things that other kids didn't typically have. I was raised by my mother, and at the time, my father, God bless him, he's deceased right now, but he was an alcoholic, and he didn't have really any involvement in my life. And I said really because I made a conscious decision at some point in time that I did not want him to be a part of my life. My mother never stopped that. She always encouraged it, but I decided I didn't want to be involved with my father. So the years went by, and I eventually moved from South Philadelphia and gradually found myself in North Philadelphia. I spent some years living there, and that's really where a lifestyle of criminality took off for me. I started selling more drugs, started working in the club as a DJ, and pretty much by the time 1984 had come around, I was delving into the use of other drugs. But from 1985 pretty much to 1994, I abused cocaine, I abused marijuana, I abused alcohol, I just abused myself. And life didn't get any better until 1994. But from 1984 to 1994, pretty much I was working as a chef. I spent a few more years after that, doing some cooking here and there, but primarily, it was just a matter of needed to do something different. So I had people around me who encouraged me to go to school, get my GED. I eventually went to community college, got an associate's degree in behavioral health, and life pretty much just kept going on from there. Till eventually I got a master's degree in human services, and I currently hold a drug and alcohol certification. But it wasn't easy. It came with a lot of commitment, a lot of sacrifices. Spent some years, in and out of different relationships, marriage. And I'm married today. I'm happily married today, I need to say. But I want to stay the course. And SOSPOT is about staying the course. All of us are in a relationship of some capacity. All of us are faced with challenges within those relationships. And all of us can use some support, some guidance, and some direction in how to improve those relationships. I also started a nonprofit organization, Daddy's Right Here Incorporated, which seeks to decrease father absenteeism. So I'm staying the course. The purpose of SOSPOT is to help others stay the course. So listen, tune in, join me, go get your coffee, your bacon, your eggs, your toast, jelly, whatever those things are that you start your morning with, and join me for SOSPOT. I look forward to you being there. I look forward to your comments. I look forward to you just talking about things that are important to you as well. Welcome to SOSPOT. Let's get it.
People have the right to be who they are. People have the right to be where they are. Once we begin to realize that where that person is at in their lives and how it's affecting our relationship, we're responsible to make a conscious decision to get out of that relationship. And yes, I understand it's more easier said than done. Trust me, I know from experience. Because we're always trying to make it go away. We're always trying to make it better. We're always hoping. We're always believing that the situation is going to get better. I can love it away. I can love them into a better condition. No, you can't. Make every moment a teach you about me moment instead of a tell you about you moment. So if I take a minute, a day, 5 days, whatever time it takes, if I take that time to withdraw from whatever that conflict was and assess what took place, assess if I had any role in your conditioning as to why you interact with me that way, assess what was going on at the time with you and or me. Look at the whole picture. And then look for a more appropriate way to approach the situation. Follow me? Look for a more appropriate way to approach the situation. Now I can go back being who I am, not being that person, not taking on their characteristics, not addressing the situation as they had addressed the situation, and it can come out whereas they learn something about me. When I find myself being at odds with a person who I have become intimate with, and when I say become intimate with, I mean that we have developed a level of closeness. I'm not even talking about sexually, but when we have become intimate, means that we begin to share our innermost thoughts and feelings about some things to one another. I have to ask myself, where is that person going with this information, where they're going with the information that they're giving me, and why. If children are not explaining what's happening with their bodies, what's happening with their minds, because there's some psychological impact that we miss. We say that they're smelling themselves. No, they're developing and they're coming into themselves. And when we understand that the child is coming into themselves, what does that feel like? What does that look like? We make it so negative when they're coming into themselves that we make them not want to be themselves, which is why we have so many of our children who stay to themselves, isolate, wind up being bullied, wind up being in a situation where one day they just explode because of our own inability as parents. Our own inability as parents to appropriately address what our child is going through. Because we don't even know. And I'm a person, I'm very analytical. I'll see things and I'll pick up on things. I'll pick up on your behavior towards me. I'll pick up on the attitude towards, and I'll call you on it. I'll call you on it, gently, but I'll call you on it. Either verbally or non-verbally. You'll get called on your behavior. Now what you do with it is entirely up to you. But only arrogant people dismiss things as having no relevance to them. Only arrogant people. Because if I'm in tune with who I am, I know what I'm capable of doing. I know what I'm capable of doing. I used to be that arrogant guy. So I know that at any given moment, that person can creep out in certain situations where I feel the need to defend myself, where I'm feeling less than, where my self-esteem is at a low. I know what I do. And when I react that way, I don't like it. And I have to fix it, not only with the other person, but I have to fix it with myself as well. The id is that which seeks everything, wants everything. It's totally self-centered. It's always seeking to please. It always wants pleasure. It always wants to feel good. It always wants whatever it wants. Ego has the responsibility of managing the id. So the ego actually protects the individual from itself. It has its own protective mechanism. If the id is seeking pleasure out of something that is not only harmful to itself, but harmful to others, the ego has a responsibility of kicking in and saying, hey, hold up, this is not good. The superego is where all the Hey, good morning. Welcome to Side Spot. The weather is changing. It's a little crisper at night, and the mornings, aren't too bad. But certainly, Florida has met my expectations in terms of fair weather. So I'm okay with the 99 in the shade, and I'm okay with the 69-degree weather. But the reality of it is the seasons are good. I've been in the seasons most of my life. Up north it's just much colder. But it does get a chill down here from what I understand. And when we were in Panama City, I actually got a little wind of, no pun intended, the chill. So I gave away a lot of my corduroy jackets when I was up there, and then by the time I got down here, I was like, I wish I hadn't given them away. But for the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about the list of things that spouses should do for one another. I did the list of things that the wife needs to begin to do in terms of making the relationship more fulfilling, and also making sure that, and nothing is guaranteed, but making every effort to ensure that you have done everything to keep your husband at home and to keep him from being with someone else. Then I also did the list of those things that husbands need to do to begin dating their wives, and I talked about how we lose sight of that. It's almost like a finish line, the dating process, the getting to know you process. Once we get to the finish line and we cross that line, it seems like we stay on the other side. Good morning, babe. We stay on the other side of that finish line, and we just kind of continue to walk along, to mosey along in a real lackadaisical way of living, losing sight of the race itself. Because there was a race. I mean, just think about how much you constantly thought about that person. When you met them, when you saw them, the palpitating heartbeat, the flutter of the butterflies in the stomach, the text messages, the phone calls, the conversations that you had face to face, whatever they were, right? Just think about how persistent you were in the process of getting to know that person. And then, like I said, what often happens is once we get across the finish line, goal has been achieved, we don't reestablish new goals. We stay the course of complacency and sometimes of abandonment and neglect. So there are a lot of things that you're responsible for doing when in a relationship that you can't lose sight of. You can't lose sight of these things. So I'm hoping that those lists that I went over were beneficial, and I hope you passed them on to others, especially others who are kind of straddling the fence on as to whether they want to remain in the marriage that they're in. And I keep using the term marriage because I'm placing an emphasis on the need to marry. It's funny how I often wonder, and I mean I'm using myself as an example because I've not been exempt from this. I look at how throughout the years of my life, the relationships that I had been in. I'm talking about from all the way back as a teenager. And I look at, what was the point? What was the point? What was really the benefit of being in a so-called committed relationship with another individual? What was the whole point of all of it? And when you look back, and I'm going to look back first, you look back and you ask yourself, your initial relationship, what was it about that person? Because your initial relationship, right, typically begins in the home with the parents. That's where your relationship begins, in the home with the parents. So I didn't have a relationship with my father. So that means, what kind of relationship was I going to have with other males as I went along through life? The relationship I had with my mother was a mother and son relationship. I'm not going to call it anything else. My mother raised me. She took responsibility for me as a child. She made every effort at ensuring that I took responsibility as a child to do the things that I was supposed to do as she dictated, right? Because it wasn't a democracy. Parenting is not necessarily a democracy. And I say that, you know, the child should have say in things. The child should have a voice. But at the end of the day, the parent makes the ultimate decision that should be a decision that reflects the betterment, the need, development of the child. Not as I want the child to be, but based on what is socially acceptable. That means that I'm still nurturing the things that that child has within him or her. Those are the things that I need to look at, right? But we have to not be their friend. So if I had a parent or parents who were friendly, they were friends, right? Then I would have some definite challenges within my relationships with others. The kind of relationships that I saw my parents involved in define for me what relationships are. And I talked early on in some of my other shows about the images that I had. And this is not to bash anyone, but I really didn't have any solid examples of commitment, of loyalty. I just didn't have those things. You know, what I saw were multiple relationships. You know, having been those persons were married or in so-called committed relationships, but they were committed. They were committed to all of them. And when you look at it from that perspective and you begin to move on, when you enter into your first one is not grounded in the trueness, the ideal relationship. It's grounded in the idea relationship. And the idea are things that you gather those things as you go along the way. Like, you don't learn for yourself, you don't read for yourself. You know, what it is about your character is what you absorb, it's what you take in, and it's what you portray to others. So, you know, I looked at the relationships that I was in, and, you know, I look at some relationships have to do with social status. You know, there's a lot of peer pressure for both sides, males and females, but I can only talk from a male perspective. But there's a lot of peer pressure, right? There's a lot of peer pressure in terms of you need to be somewhat an idol, an image, an object, not a person. You need to be a jock because you represent something that's significant, right? Because, you know, you're like center of attention. I wasn't a jock. You need to be somebody who is tough. You know, somebody who can demonstrate that you can protect me, that you can beat up somebody. I wasn't tough. I weighed every bit of about maybe 85 to 100 pounds in my youth. And I always felt like the little guy who you see, well, for those of you who can remember, the little comic book ad with the guy sitting on the beach with his girl, and the jocks over there playing volleyball, and the dude comes over and he kicks the sand in the face of the guy sitting down with his girl, and, you know, is flexing, you know, in front of the girl, and the girl, you know, is attracted to that person. Well, that was what most of my youth was like. That's what most of my youth was like. Therefore, I had to find some way in. Now, I was the guy who, I would carry your books to school for you. I would sit on the step and talk to you. I would walk down the street and hold hands with you. You know, that's the kind of guy that I was. I was a real shy kid, right? And I even like was so shy to the point where like the little girls would come to my house looking for me, and my mother would tell me to go ahead outside. I didn't, you know, I was just really shy. I'm an introvert. I learned later on in years that I'm more of an introvert than anything else. But the characteristics that I began to develop were based on those things that I saw around me. So as the years went on, I became real aggressive. I began to do foolish things just to show that I could, that I had the potential to do those things that you wanted me to do, right? So much so that I began to believe it, and I began to internalize those things, and I became that person, right? So I vowed to never be in that position of sitting on the sand when the jock is coming to kick sand in my face, and my girl is attracted to that. Now, here's the other piece to that. See, because this is the piece that was missed in that whole little caption, that little the advertisement. She was attracted to him, yet she was with me, right? So why are you with me if you're attracted to him? Muscle, jock, athletic. I wasn't that dude. I was just a nice guy, right? I was just a nice guy, right? So, and I had the same experience in life. I do all these kind, gentlemanly kind of things, and I say gentlemen. I was still in my youth, but as years began to go on, but you always wound up giving the goodies to him, that dude. So you wanted the best of both worlds. You wanted somebody to be loving and caring and respectful of you when you wanted them. But the other side to it is that you had a side about you that you, for whatever reason, couldn't share with that person, the introverted person, but you would go to the other person, right? So when you look at, for me, through that lens of life, relationships just weren't real favorable, and they weren't reflective of who it is that I wanted to be, but I became that person as a result of going along to get along. And that's what I did in my youth. But it was also a matter of social status for a male, right? That you had to have multiple girlfriends. You know, you had to have multiple girlfriends. And because that showed that you were that was your manliness. That was you coming into your manliness. So one of the things that I came to find out as when I was younger, that I did start hanging with some guys. I found guys that were just like me, and I had to find them out myself. Often we try to involve, well, I'll say this, that I had people who tried to involve me in different things. I liked playing sports. I did. I played baseball. They used to call me cocky because I had a real strong arm, right? I used to, run real fast. So like, I didn't like getting. I played football, but I didn't like getting hit, right? So I was a wide receiver. All they do is tell me to go long, and I can outrun everybody. Now, catching the ball was always a challenge because I'd have to be able to connect with the ball. But I can certainly outrun everybody. Therefore, getting hit was not an option. So I did a lot of things. I wouldn't play basketball every day, but I started delving into things that I didn't need to be. But I felt me changing. But one of the things that I've also learned about myself throughout the years is that, and I mentioned this a moment ago, about nurturing the aspects of self that's real important. I like to draw. I ask a lot of questions. I'm very inquisitive about things. I learn things. I do things that many people don't even know that I do. I'm a pen and ink artist. I used to do, public relations and promotion work with local entertainment in the city of Philadelphia. I do advertisement. I do all my own videos. I edit all my own videos. I shoot all my own videos. I shot my own and edited and produced my own film. I self-publish my own book. And the list goes on and on and on. So as an introvert, right, I am the person who you will find to be the most committed in a relationship. because I don't occupy my space with a whole lot of folks. At 56 years old, 99.9% of the time you see me, I'm rolling by myself unless I'm rolling with my wife. I've never been a dude that's been around a whole lot of guys. I had a small crew. It was about 6 of us. And they called us the Better Than Crew. You know, we did our little thing, but we just chilled together. We sat, we talked, we had like so-called normal conversations, right? We talked about the nonsense that was going on around us. I grew up in a project in South Philly, Wilson Park Project, right? And it was a whole lot going on, a lot of stuff that we stayed away from, but I still, you know, have intermittently been in touch with a couple of guys throughout the years, and I still see them, you know, doing what they have to do in their lives, but I was never about a whole bunch of people. You know, I'm very selective in friendships. I'm very selective of relationships because I don't have time for the nonsense. It irritates me. Guys my age irritated me. I couldn't be around 14-year-olds. I couldn't be around 15-year-olds when I was that age. I needed to be around the 20, the 23, the 24-year-olds. I had to be around the old heads. You know, I had to be. Because there was nothing that 14 and 15-year-olds could provide for me intellectually. They just couldn't. They were just foolish. They were just foolish. That's why mentoring is so important, but that's a whole nother show. Because young males need to have images. When they lack positive images, when they lack images of males, of adult males, right? And when I'm talking about adult males, right, I'm talking about, you know, those who are at least 10 years, you know, 5, 10 years at a minimum, they're senior, right? I had to hang with the old heads because there was nothing that the young boys could talk to me about, right? Nothing. Nothing. So I hung with them, and I learned a lot from them because introverts are very intellectual. We're studious. My wife and I were talking the other day. She called me a nerd, you know, and I used to look at her as being, you know, nerdy. And I look at myself, and you know what? I really am. I really am, and I'm okay with that. You know, I'm a person who thinks a lot, who you know, does a lot of different things, who is always creating different things, and that's what introverts do. That's what we do. But being around folks my age just wasn't it. I got involved sexually at 13 with a 22-year-old. It was the best thing at the time since sliced bread, but it changed my life. It changed my life. So while my little buddies, they were talking about it, I was being about it. So everything about my life was ingrained in people who were conditioning me to think beyond a child, a kid, a teen. But they also, again, fed me information regarding relationships, male-female relationships, that was also unhealthy. So as years went on, and I went on, and I got married for the first time, I entered into it and really didn't know. Really didn't know what it is that I needed to do in order to maintain a marriage. Because what they didn't teach me was about the need to maintain myself beyond just having employment, just beyond, you know, making money. It was more involved in life than that. And a lot of times we forget that, and we enter into this marriage, and we think that the focus should be on the other person because we feel like the other person should be accommodating to us in many different capacities, as opposed to realizing that in this relationship, the first thing that you need to do is to take care of you. If you're not healthy enough to take care of yourself, how can you possibly be healthy enough to take care of somebody else, right? And when you look at healthy versus unhealthy, there are a lot of unhealthy people entering into marriage and thinking that the marriage is going to be healthy as a result of it. And that was my first inkling when I got married. I thought that my life was going to improve as a result of me taking this step. A step that I hadn't seen anybody else taking steps to marry. And there was any significance to it. None. None. But that, for me, it was a matter of, and that's where the introvert aspect of self comes from. Inside of me, I was seeking some success in life. I was seeking to achieve something in life. And it wasn't a matter of achieving the sexual aspect of the relationship. It was a matter of something I couldn't explain. I can't explain it even now, what it is that I was seeking. But I know that I was seeking to be more improved as a man. And I just thought that that would be something that I needed to do. But being single-minded, and I also did a show on married life versus single life, but being single-minded, entering into that, it was disastrous from the start. For me. Not even talking about the marriage, but it was just disastrous entering into it. Because I was single-minded. I was single-conditioned. I had the idea of marriage, and I didn't have the ideal. And you'll hear me use those terms often, because most of what we live is idea based, not ideal based, right? Even if you grow up in an environment where you are being taught. And when I'm talking about being taught, I mean from a religious aspect, because when you look at a relationship with you as a servant and God as the master, right? You see yourself differently, right? Because, and I always say this, that religion brings along a prescription for living. Therefore, if you are going into a relationship and you're going in there without a prescription, you're going to remain sick. And that's what this comes down to. And I'm not professing that, that I am a perfect person in any capacity, because it's all about, we're all learning whatever it is that we practice. But when you begin to look at entering into anything without a prescription, right, you are doomed to fail. Right, so you can get not one of the generic drugs. What do you call the ones that they make up on the street? It escapes me at this moment, but those synthetic. You can enter into a marriage with a synthetic approach to living, and you'll find yourself eventually seeing the side effects of the synthetic chemical that has been put together, and you'll see it play out. Like, it plays out in all kind of aspects, like arguments, lack of compromise, resentments, infidelity, and a host of other things, because that once one comes out, they all come out, and it becomes disastrous. But not just disastrous for the marriage itself, because there are a lot of marriages that are high conflict, that go on for years. And it brings to mind, what's that couple in Why Did I Get Married? The ghetto couple, she come in loud, right? And they've been together for years. And they will continue to be together in that capacity, because they are both drama-driven, high-conflict people. They do best together. High-conflict people with low to no conflict people don't work. And they don't work because one is always seeking the entertainment, the activity, the tension, because they thrive on it, while the other is just laid back and kind of looking at you like you a fool, and it's just a matter of time before it ends. But women seem to have more hope for men improving than men have for the actual outcome of improving. Women will. I see the characteristics in him. He's a good dude. If he get himself together, he'd be all right. If he stops drinking, or he stops smoking, or he stays away from the crew, he'll be better. Because I see the goodness in him. But you can see a goodness in a lot of things. You can see a goodness in a lion, and watching it, live in its natural environment. Go pet it. Go pet it, and you'll see the goodness go away, right? Because it's conditioned as an animal to be as such. So along the way, right, there's a lot of things that a person internalizes, right? And going back to the list, right, there's things that you have to do in order to maintain those relationships. Here's the problem. When you stop doing those things, when you stop looking at the list that I went over with you in the preceding shows, you stop doing all those things that are necessary for the stability of that relationship, what happens? Now, I'm in no way, shape, form, or fashion in this show, so let me get this out. condoning infidelity, condoning adultery, condoning cheating, any of those things. But there are realities in many relationships. There are realities in many relationships. Some people remain in those relationships. Some people terminate those relationships as soon as it's found. Right? As soon as it's found. And I've often said, there's nothing to talk about. If you cheat, it's a wrap. And that's in any capacity. And I tell you why. Because at the end of the day, it never goes away. It never goes away. Forgiveness does not erase the pain and the suffering that comes along with that. It does not. It's never forgotten. Everything you do is always going to remain suspect. Every time you decide you want to approach a situation about a person's negative behavior, right? The first thing you want to hear about is, dude, I stayed with you through what you did, or vice versa, right? So you really don't have a leg to stand on. So the relationship is no longer going to be sitting on a foundation of an ideal way of living. Now it's an idea way of living. So that prescription goes out the door. It doesn't exist anymore. It goes right out the door. So you have to look at, there are also people who remain in these relationships who people try to convince themselves, and people try to convince them that they need to stay. And then people bash others for staying. It's your choice. It's entirely your choice. It's entirely your choice. Right? But you have to ask yourself, what happened? Did it happen in the course of the relationship? Did I just turn a blind eye to all the signs while we were dating? What happened? When did it happen? Right? And you can get all these lists on why men cheat, why women cheat, and I'll say this again. The difference is that in many cases that men need a place, women need a reason. A reason. Right? So as we as males develop into a mature consciousness, and we have an ideal perception of commitment, we begin to look at things a lot differently. But when we continue to be focused on idea, she looks this way, I'm attracted to her because of this, you start putting things in place. What it comes down to is, you can't put things in place. You can't. I want to be loved. So when you got to first make the list of what you want. What you want. And you have to look at that list. Because first, when you make that list, you have to look at, if these are all the things I want from somebody else, how many things on this list can I actually give to myself? You have to look at that. Because if you believe that the things that are on that list, right, can only be provided by another, then that's going to be part of the problem. Everything that you put on that list, right, has to be things that you can do for yourself. Another person should merely complement, enhance those things about yourself. That's all it should. They shouldn't be replacements for any aspect of your life, except loneliness. Now, sometimes loneliness can be dealt with in another way too. Get a pet. But everything else that's on that list, right, should be things that you are looking to enhance about your life. Now, you put things on there, and you meet a person, and you start talking about these things that are on your list. And you don't sit down and run down the list. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm simply saying that you have conversation. And you look for these things. Right? My wife likes to fish. My wife likes the outdoors. We like nature. Right? I love nature. I'm an outdoors person. I like to be outdoors. You can sit me in the middle of the woods with a can, and I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm good. And I can sit here all day, right? We play board games together. We play card games together, right? I like playing card games. I grew up as a child playing card games, right? I start looking at things like that. I'm a conversationist. I'm a person who loves to talk. My wife does too, right? My wife watches a lot of nature channels, a lot of things on the History Channel, things like that. The same thing about me. I like the same thing, right? So you go on and on and on, right? I'm a very passionate person about life, right? Very passionate about life. Very sensitive person. A person who has endured a lot of things and who has overcome a lot of things and has grown through all those things. And my list can go on and on and on and on, right? And those are the things that we connect with. And I haven't even talked about sex. Haven't even talked about sex, right? See, that's what I'm talking about in terms of when we start looking at why people cheat, right? We often get caught up in the unfairness, right? The lack of loyalty. The, somebody else used, what was the word that they used? The betrayal. The betrayal towards us, first and foremost. But it's actually toward themselves. It's actually toward themselves. Absolutely, you're going to be hurt. Absolutely. Absolutely, you're going to have some feelings about it. Right? But what you have to look at is this. If I'm in a relationship with someone, and I'm talking about marriage, I'm not talking about girlfriend and boyfriend. If I'm in a relationship with someone, and I'm doing all these things, I'm putting all this into this relationship, I'm spending time with them, I'm getting property with them, or I'm living with them, I'm planning future with them, I'm doing all these things, and then I turn around and I violate that, right? Who do you think is going to be most impacted by that violation? Right? You or the violator? Let's think about it for a minute. Having said all I just said about the investment, right? Now I lose that. I lose that. And irregardless of the fact that you will see people move on after such and say, well, you know, you with me all this time and you can just move on. That's very indicative of who they are. They hadn't settled in to the ideal perspective of marriage. They were still on the idea perspective. And what they sought to do, what we often seek to do in those situations, is to satisfy, is to self-medicate. Because that's what it is. We think that people are moving on, right, from us. And that's why they're with someone else and they appear to be happy. They're self-medicating, right? That's all it is. That's self-medicating. Right? And it's self-medicating in many ways. Because the other person, having sex with the other person, fulfills the naturalness of the human being. It's natural. It's just natural. The other self-medicating is the avoidance of the traumatic experience. It was a traumatic experience, and we don't want to see it from what it is. That's trauma. Anytime, any relationship, no matter how long or how short the period of time together, if there was any kind of investment in it, it will be trauma involved when we part ways. Right? The other self-medicating aspect of it is the damage that I've done in terms of my person, the characteristic of me, the guilt, the shame, and embarrassment. I'm masking it with another person. I'm making you believe that I have moved on. Not from you, but that I have moved on with life. I want to give the appearance that I'm strong-willed, that I can go on without you. And it was your mistake for not taking me back. I know I was wrong, but you can give me another chance. You can let me come back. We can work this out. I was dumb. I get it. But you just want to just ride off and just like not come back? So it has little to do with you. Sure, there's a violation there. You feel violated. You trust me. You trusted me. And matter of fact, you invested time. And now you have to start all over again. And then you start all over again in search of, and then it happens again. And it happens again, and it happens again, and it happens again. The question then becomes, what is happening again? What are you doing? What are you doing? What is it that keeps you being so unsatisfied with self? What are you doing? That you continue to self-sabotage your circumstances every time. Every time. When you look at the statistics on marriage, the divorce rate, domestic violence, when you look at things of this nature and you kind of read into, right, the circumstance, you know, a lot of things involve the family courts, because in many cases there are children involved. And I hate to digress, but my brother and I had a conversation the other day, and we were talking about we were on the phone for about 2 hours, talking about a lot of things, but one of the things that he had brought up was about systems things. My brother and I, we shared similarities in terms of our militant thinking, but in terms of a lot of our systems perspectives, we share different perspectives in terms of I'm more conservative than liberal, right? And I was telling him about, like, how, you know, all these males running around spraying seed up in all these women that don't have aren't responsible enough to take care of them, right? And the conditions that it brings about in the black community because of that kind of conduct. And when we start looking at how we enter into relationships, we're so sexualized, right, that we lose sight of the fact that, well, you're great in bed, but how responsible are you in living? How responsible are you in that? Do you go to work every day? Are you always calling out? Are you always calling late? Are you always finding a reason not to go in? What are you doing about your children? Are you taking care of your children? Do you make an effort to heal the relationships between you and the children's mother, things like that? The responsibilities of those kind of things, you know? And a lot of times we lose focus of that. A lot of times we forget those things, and those things become a topic of discussion in the course of the relationship after we've already had sex, after we've already gotten married. Now you're kind of perturbed about some of the things that you begin to see about my character. Those things that you see about my character really had nothing to do with, well, maybe they did because you wrote the list, but what did you leave off the list? So your list has to be thorough. It has to be thorough. But oftentimes the things that are not on that list are the things that cause the problem, because we're not equipped to face those things. We're not equipped to face those things. That's why we don't put them on the list. So when they come up in the course of a relationship, right, we tend to shy away from those kind of things. That's why you see people who are in these relationships that are high conflict, that are laden with domestic violence. And they just go on and on and on and on in those relationships because they have stuck to the original list. But as you mature, your list should change. So my list at 15 should be much different than my list at 50. Should be much different. And one of the other things about that list is you have to understand this. That list is a living document. It's like when you conduct a psychosocial interview. I always tell people a psychosocial interview, right, is a living document. So even though it is completed upon admission when a person comes in for services, right, it's not done. It's not done, because only thing that person is giving you at that moment during the course of that admission, during the course of that initial interview, is what they know best. They can only give you superficial things. They can't give you everything. And even for those who go beyond, because they've reached this total bottom where they just like, they try to give it all to you, there's a core of that dissension, that dis-ease that exists that they have yet to face. It's the same thing with you developing your list. It's the same thing with your list. So when you start moving forward in a relationship and you start seeing all these things happen and you're ill-equipped, and you're in an unhealthy relationship because that other person is ill-equipped as well, it gets real hectic. But then you're so far gone in so many cases that you spend years of your life because of the investment. Right? Because of the investment. I mean, how many of us have had cars, right, that we've kept, right, for years, and we just sunk money into it, know the car got to go. But we tell ourselves every reason why we can't get a new car. We make up all these kind of things about why we can't get a new car. I can't afford it. But when you look at how much you keep spending on that car, how much you keep dumping into that car on a monthly basis, and you look at a monthly payment, right, maybe I need to revisit that. But oftentimes we'll just keep going. Then what happens is the car breaks down. And it usually breaks down at the most inopportune time. And it's shot. And now you're forced to get another one anyway if you want to continue to have the convenience of traveling back and forth as you have. Same thing with relationships. Oftentimes we wait until we're forced to do something about a particular behavior that has presented itself in our relationship. Hence brings us to today's topic about the cheat sheet. What we don't know. It's what we don't know that hurts the most. So there's some lists that I had sought out online, and I wanted to kind of cover a couple of those things that I saw on the list of why people cheating, infidelity signs, catching somebody. Let me say this though, right? The most devastating, the most painful thing that a person can experience, is infidelity. You know, catching a person in action has to be the most, it's not been my experience, but it has to be, it's got to be so devastating to a person. And in so many ways. Because, you know, you trust. First thing you think about all those things that y'all do together that now this person is doing with somebody else. You see them. Even if you didn't see something happen, you see them. The image is in your mind. What they're doing with somebody else. And if that's the first thing that comes to mind, the sexual aspect of the relationship. Because again, I remind everyone that, and it's especially for women, when women are laying before us and in their true naturalness, that what they're giving to us as men is so far beyond our conception. You know, when we're immature in our condition, and immature in thinking, the most vulnerable condition that a woman can be in. And we really have to get better. And I say we, not me. I'm saying as men, I'm speaking for men. With the appreciation for that act, and stop being so irresponsible in it. And I mean irresponsible and responsible in every capacity. So when you look at cheating and finding out that your partner has been with someone else, right, it's devastating. And when people go out and they start looking for the signs, they start searching for things, that becomes even more painful. You know, you always get that gut feeling that something ain't right. But what it does to your head and what it does to your life and your condition is a terrible thing. So let me go to, this is Huffington Post. Huffington Post has this list. 10 classic signs your spouse may be cheating. And this is Huffington Post. And this is an article from 2013. And it's cheating signs, 10 classic. Now classic means that this is some old school stuff. This has been around for a long time, just like cheating. Right? But 10 classic signs that, you know, something going on here. And it uses the term he because, you know, it's speaking more towards males, but in reading the article, it's not gender specific in terms of the acts, because these are acts that are committed by both. So let me read you from the article. When it comes to your partner cheating, I don't believe there are any definitive clues. He or she could be working late or could be cheating late. She or he could be dressing up for you or somebody else, the side piece. That's what makes this type of thing so confusing and hurtful. I want you to understand that. When you are trusting that if a person says to you that they're working late, when you trust that that's what they're doing, that's what they're doing. That's what they're telling you they're doing. Right? If they are getting dressed and, you know, and they taking time to be in the mirror and make sure everything is tight, and they're walking out of the house and they're going to work, or they're going to attend, you know, some function or something like that, you trust that's what they're doing. And that's why I said it makes this type of thing so confusing and hurtful, because of the trust that you put into, you know, relationships are an investment. You put everything into this person. Time, energy, effort, passion, thoughts, everything goes into that person. It's just me and you. It's just me and you. Nobody else. When you trust your spouse, you trust their explanations. But there are always certain things that get our antenna up. They don't seem to change much over the years. Though with the advent of technology, those little hints now seem to involve a lot more cell phones and social media, and a lot less lipstick on the collar. Here are 10 signs your spouse may be cheating. Number 1 on the list. She or he starts dressing better. According to divorce lawyer Marilyn Stowe, this is still a sign you should look out for. Did they suddenly morph from flannel and dirty sneakers or boots to smart suits and shiny loafers? You know, did they all of a sudden make a transition into, you know, straight leg jeans and fitted shirts, fitted caps, and when they used to just wear, you know, just khakis and a flannel shirt? Or, you know, did she go from wearing, you know, dresses that looked like they were tents on her, to those clingy kind of dresses that they have in the stores with some, you know, 6-inch stilettos? You know, did you see a change in how they dress? They start shopping in different stores and things of that nature. And those things can happen if, you know, you and your spouse are having a conversation about it. But if that's not something that two of you have been talking about, and all of a sudden you start seeing a different wardrobe, like, could it be? Could it be? Because if we're in the relationship together, you would be telling me, babe, I just want to do something different. You know, I want to look good for you. You know, I often hear you talk about, you know how beautiful I am and how you would like to see me in certain things. And, you know, if you're having those kind of conversations and that person, you know, is aware that, you know, that this is what your interests are, that's something different. And even that sometimes, if it happens like on the spur of the moment, if all of a sudden, you know, just bam, like I'm going to change, and you haven't had any conversation, then You know, it's something that to be looked at. And this is just a list of classic signs that your spouse may be cheating. Not that they are. Not that they are. Because the other aspect of that adds to your own paranoia, your own challenges with self-esteem, your own challenges with trust, your own, you know, difficulties, period. Because of the traumatic experiences you've had in previous relationships. They start wearing different cologne, they start wearing cologne. Right? They start new jobs and they start going in dressing a little different. They start school and they start dressing a little different. They start smelling a little different. They start spending a little more time, you know, and you know, with themselves. It could be a sign, right? Could be a sign that that new bottle of cologne or body oil or perfume wasn't something that they went and bought. Wasn't something they went and bought. It was a gift. A gift. And all of a sudden you're wearing that gift. You always smelled like Brut. Now when you start wearing some Aramis, I'm going well, the classic signs, so I'm talking about classic colognes. But it could be a sign that a person begins to pay more attention to themselves, and y'all ain't had that discussion. You know, been business as usual for all these years, and all of a sudden you switch gears, right? You switch gears. Number 2 on that list, guarding the cell phone. Yeah, the cell phone. This is one, I'm reading from an article now, this is one I've heard a lot in my girlfriend circles she speaks of. He suddenly starts sleeping with the cell phone by his bedside or bringing it into the shower with him. He may turn it off when you're together and say he doesn't want to be disturbed while he's with you. But he really doesn't want to risk her texting or calling while you're there. If he won't even let you touch his phone, something up. And that's what she wrote, something. She used that word, something. But she put an H in it. If it's something up, that means there's no H in there because there's no pronunciation. So, but anywho, so we know like cell phones are real big issues, right? Real big issues, man, because it can conceal so much. It can conceal so much. You got all kind of messaging apps on the phones, right? You have text messaging. Right, you have so many features on the phone where you can have flash alerts that are certain colors. You can put them on. You just put them on silent, and you know you pretty much will still know if they rang or not. You get emails. It's all kind of ways, man, that people are cheating. Right, and again, it's real important to understand. If a person is taking their phone everywhere, why do you keep picking up your phone? Why is it every room you go and you pick up your phone? Why? Why? How come your ringer's not on? It wasn't like you were at work. It wasn't like you were at a function. You had to turn your ringer off. How come your ringer is off? Why is your phone just on vibrate? Why? Why is it I never see your phone like sitting on a table or anything like that? When I do see your phone sitting on a table or something like that, it's always face down. Why? You have to look at those kind of things. And again, right, it's always a matter of don't give the appearance of something if that's not what it is. And if a person feels uncomfortable or the person, you know, is always being questioning, right? Do things to establish a level of comfort, right? But it's no way that you should be taking your phone everywhere you go, right? Like, what's that all about? If you're asleep, right, in the bedroom and your phone is on a charger in the dining room or the living room, why are you taking your phone and unplugging it from there and taking it into the room with you? You're asleep. You're not going to answer the phone. As a matter of fact, you took it and you moved it and you put it on vibrate or you turned the ringer off. What was the point in moving the phone? So you're guarding the phone. You're making sure the phone is not within reach or easily accessible by the other person. I can go on and on about the cell phone, right? I can tell you the cell phone, listen, was a deal breaker for a whole lot of so-called players, right? Really was, especially before people started using, you know, the passwords and all that stuff like that, right? Which is number 3 on the list. But listen, you know, and that's just saying that they may be cheating. They may be. But if I see you, you know, you're texting, and you know, I'm hearing all the bings and trings and everything else, all these alerts going off, and then you're not even responding to it, that's a red flag in itself. Like, okay, so why are you not answering it? I keep hearing the alerts. Why are you not answering it? Why are you not checking it? And you should not be offended by it. You should answer the question. And that's another aspect of the marriage. Like, okay, wait a minute. So I can't ask you that? Why? Well, because it's my phone. I don't ask you about your. That's not the point. All right, you don't ask me about my phone. Okay, I'm asking you about yours. So why is it I can't ask you about your phone? You act like you're my father or something. No, I'm your husband. I have every right to ask you about anything that I choose to, because I'm your husband. Right? I'm your husband, so I can ask you about anything I want to. Okay? And remember that list that we talked about of what the husband and what the wives are responsible, husbands and wives are responsible to do in order to maintain their relationships, in order for their relationship to grow and flourish for a lifetime. Right? The next thing on this, number 3, password protecting everything. In this day and age, it's prudent to password protect your phone. But it can also be a sign if he suddenly starts doing it when he never cared before, or he refuses to give you the password. And y'all remember, what movie was that? Where, you know, same movie. Why Did I Get Married? They brought, again, that movie, those films bring up a lot of issues, but that particular movie brought up a lot of things. Like, they wanted the password, and they had a whole discussion about knowing, how come you don't know? You know his password? Girl, how you get him to tell you his password? I went through the whole phase. Listen, when I would work, take my phone to work, right, I will always make sure my phone was password protected. I don't take my phone into the prison. So therefore, I don't need to necessarily keep it password protected, but because it's in my car, it is. But guess what? My wife knows my passwords. My wife knows my passwords. She can at any time pick up my phone and go and enter into my phone, enter into my iPad, enter into my laptop at any given time. And people often say, well, right, that's privacy. No, there's no such thing. Let me help you out here. As husband and wife, there's no such thing as privacy. Even if you're on a turlet, there's no such thing as private.